Please. I can't remember the title, but she used to read it every autumn. Something about gardens and memory. She'd cry at the ending every single time, and I'd hold her hand and pretend I wasn't crying too. The man's voice cracked as he stood at the circulation desk of Willowbrook Public Library, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he clutched a faded photograph of a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. 25-year-old Elowyn Marsh looked up from her computer, immediately setting aside the stack of returns she'd been processing, her heart responding to the raw grief in his words. "I'll help you find it," Elowyn said softly, coming around the desk. "I'm Elowyn. What else can you remember about the book?" The man, maybe 70 years old, dressed in a carefully pressed but outdated suit, seemed surprised by her immediate attention, as if he'd expected to be dismissed. "I'm Cornelius Thorne, and there was a blue cover, I think, or maybe green. My memory isn't what it was. My wife Violet passed 3 months ago, and I've been trying to find this book because reading it feels like having her here again, just for a little while." Elowyn's throat tightened. She guided Cornelius to a comfortable chair in the reading area. "Let's sit and talk about it. Sometimes memories come back when we're not forcing them. Tell me about your wife. What did she love about autumn?" Over the next hour, Cornelius shared fragments of a 50-year love story, how Violet had been a teacher, how she tended a magnificent garden, how she believed books were bridges between souls. And slowly, through patient questions and genuine care, Elowyn pieced together enough clues to identify the book, The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. When she placed the worn hardcover in Cornelius's hands, his eyes filled. "This is it. Oh God, this is it. How did you—" "You said gardens and memory and autumn," Elowyn explained gently, "and the way you described her crying at the ending, about things growing back to life even after we think they're dead, that felt like this story." Cornelius clutched the book like a lifeline, and Elowyn quietly checked it out to him, waiving the late fee policy in case he needed it longer than usual. "Take all the time you need, Mr. Thorne, and please come back anytime, even just to sit and read." What Elowyn didn't know was that Cornelius had been to 3 other libraries that week, where busy librarians had done cursor searches and suggested he try online bookstores. Only she had taken the time to truly listen, to treat his grief with the tenderness it deserved. Cornelius began coming every Tuesday afternoon, the day Violet had always visited the library. He'd sit in the same chair, reading The Secret Garden over and over, and Elowyn would bring him tea from the staff room, sit with him when the library was quiet, listen to stories about Violet's laughter and wisdom, and the garden she'd cultivated with such devotion. "She would have liked you," Cornelius said one rainy afternoon. "You have her way of seeing people, really seeing them, not just processing them like tasks." Elowyn smiled softly. "My parents taught me that kindness is never wasted. My dad's a retired teacher. My mom volunteers at hospice. They showed me that the most important thing we can offer people is presence." Over months, their friendship deepened. Elowyn learned that Cornelius and Violet had never had children, that most of their friends had passed, that he lived alone in the house where they'd built their life together. And Cornelius learned that Elowyn worked 2 jobs to help her parents with medical bills, that she loved libraries because books had been her refuge during a difficult childhood, that she dreamed of someday running literacy programs for underserved communities. What Cornelius never mentioned was that he'd been a successful architect, that the modest clothes and quiet demeanor disguised considerable wealth, or that he'd been struggling with a difficult decision about his estate. Then one Tuesday, Cornelius didn't come. Elowyn felt uneasy but assumed he was unwell. When he missed the second week, she looked up his address in the library system and called, getting no answer. Worried, she drove to his house after her shift, a beautiful Victorian home with an overgrown but still magnificent garden. Cornelius answered the door looking frail and exhausted. "Elowyn, I'm sorry. I've been meaning to call. I had a small stroke. Nothing serious, but it reminded me I don't have forever." "Can I help?" Elowyn asked immediately. "Drive you to appointments? Bring groceries?" Over the following weeks, Elowyn became a steady presence in Cornelius's life, not out of obligation but genuine care. She'd stop by after work, help tend Violet's garden, read aloud from The Secret Garden when his eyes grew too tired. And Cornelius began sharing deeper truths. "I've been trying to decide what to do with everything," he said one evening as they sat among the roses Violet had planted. "I have no family, no children to leave it to. Violet always said we should leave the world better than we found it, but I've been struggling with how." "What would make Violet happy?" Elowyn asked gently. Cornelius smiled sadly. "She'd want the garden preserved, the house used for something meaningful, and she'd want books. She always believed literacy changed lives, gave people wings." 6 months after their first meeting, Cornelius passed away peacefully in his sleep. Elowyn attended the small funeral, grieving the loss of a friend who'd enriched his life with his stories and quiet wisdom. 2 weeks later, she was called to a lawyer's office. confused and slightly anxious. What she learned there left her speechless. Cornelius had left her everything: the house, his estate, and specific instructions. Convert the property into a community library and literacy center. Preserve Violet's garden as a reading space. Use the funds to create programs serving those who needed books most. He wrote this, the lawyer said, handing her a letter in Cornelius's shaky handwriting. Dear Elowen, you gave an old man drowning in grief a reason to keep living. You saw past my loneliness to the person underneath. You treated finding a book like it was the most important task in the world, because you understood it wasn't about the book, it was about connection, memory, love. Violet would have adored you. She believed books saved lives, and you proved her right by saving mine, one Tuesday afternoon at a time. Use this gift to do what you've always dreamed of. Bring books and hope to people who need both. Make our home a place of light. That's what she would want. That's what I want. With deep gratitude and love, Cornelius. Elowen wept, overwhelmed by the trust and generosity, by the weight of honoring two people she'd never expected to impact so profoundly. A year later, the Violet and Cornelius Thorne Community Library opened its doors. A beautiful space with Violet's garden blooming outside, floor-to-ceiling windows letting in light, comfortable chairs inviting people to stay. Free programs served immigrants learning English, children needing after-school care, elderly people seeking connection, anyone hungry for stories and community. On the opening day, Elowen stood in the main reading room where Cornelius's photograph hung beside Violet's, with a worn copy of The Secret Garden displayed beneath. She thought about a simple question asked by a grieving widower, about taking time to truly listen, about kindness compounding in ways we never imagine. Thank you, she whispered to their images, for teaching me that the smallest acts of compassion can bloom into something extraordinary, for showing me that seeing people's humanity and honoring it matters more than efficiency or convenience, for proving that love never really ends, it just transforms into new ways of caring for the world. Because kindness is never a small thing. A patient hour spent helping someone find a book, genuine presence offered to loneliness, treating every person's story as worthy of attention. These choices ripple outward in ways we cannot predict. We never know whose life we might transform by simply choosing to care, by seeing the person behind the request, by offering our time and heart when it would be easier to offer nothing at all. That's how grace works, quietly, persistently, turning ordinary moments into extraordinary legacies that outlive us all. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.